Ollie, thank you for agreeing to talk to me today. Just going to talk about, your retirement from the game and how it affected you in your life post playing rugby. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm with Ollie Phillips. He's the ex-England 7 captain. He played for Newcastle Falcons and Stade Francais. I think I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah, you are a good lad.
Yeah, voted Overseas Player of the Year in 2011. And since he's retired from the game, he's climbed Kilimanjaro, Mont Blanc and Everest. So very impressive life after retirement. So, Ollie, how are you today?
I'm great, thanks. I'm great. I'm excited about the fact that lockdown is coming to an end, and finally I can sort of see people, hug people, and say hello to people other than my wife and 2 kids, which should be fun.
Yeah, it'd be great when it's finally lifted. So, I just want to jump in with my first question. And you were forced to retire from rugby due to an injury. I just want to sort of know like how hard it was for yourself to adjust to sort of civilian life following your retirement from the game.
Yeah, I think it didn't hit me for quite a while, to be honest. It was quite sudden. I played it'll happen. I played in a World Cup in Russia, in Moscow, and I got injured. And I thought it was sort of, you normally get injured and you think, oh, it'd be fine. It's like, they'll just tell me what I've got to do. And they sort of said, actually, there's nothing you can do. This is it. It's kind of all over. So, you always have like grand plans. Mine was to basically go that was in 2013, and mine was to go all the way to Rio 2016 Olympics and sort of hang my boots up then. I was 29, so I thought I had a bit of life left in me and all the rest of that sort of stuff. So it was a real shock at that point. And I think, everyone talks about fight or flight. I don't know which side I was on, but I leapt at basically the first opportunity that came in front of me. And that was to go and do something called the Clipper Around the World race. So I actually went and sort of sailed around the world for a year as part of this Clipper race, which was an amazing experience. And I was so sort of fortunate to do it. And if I look at it from probably a sort of psychological perspective, I was ultimately just running away from the realization that my rugby career was over. I was almost delaying it. I went away for the year. I sort of hoped that my leg would recover in time by going away for a year, being away from the game, that actually when I came back, I would be able to play again and I would actually be able to sort of pick it up. And what a great story if I go and sail around the world and then the first port of call we sailed to on the Clipper race was Rio de Janeiro. I was like, wow, wouldn't it be brilliant? The first port I sailed to and the last port I end my career in is Rio. So I still had these sort of like, so you can call them delusional if you want, but hopes and dreams of like, maybe I can make amends to this sort of situation. So it took a while. It took probably the best part of 2 years for me to actually accept, I'm not going back to this now. I'm not a rugby player anymore. And that was when, things got real tough. That was when I sort of properly, fell off a cliff, for want of a better description, just psychologically.
Yeah, you just mentioned now that you've fallen off a cliff moment. You've like you just said, you've admitted in the past that you've suffered with depression and became sort of introverted in your life following your career in rugby. What do you think were the main factors in you, becoming that way in your life?
Yeah, I think, I'll be honest with you. Like, I don't know whether I don't know what being depressed is. I don't know. I'm not a clinical psychologist and all the rest of it, but I think I was, because basically I didn't want to be around anymore. And when you start having those sorts of thoughts, that are pretty dark and depressing thoughts, especially given my sort of personality and character, I'm sort of fairly outward and upbeat, outgoing and upbeat. It was definitely a move away from how I am. And I remember having these sort of moments, almost like out of body experiences, like reflecting on this person that was thinking like this, thinking, Ollie, what the hell are you talking about? Like, that's not you. And why are you thinking like that? So I'd say, just to help people, like, it's not like one moment you wake up and you go, oh, I'm sort of depressed. It was a behavioral perspective that was, just not feeling that you had any sort of self-worth or that you could really deliver against anything. And then sort of how did it manifest itself for me? I just felt that I couldn't really, I didn't really have any direction, any clarity, any real purpose. I'd lost my sort of identity. I found it very, very difficult to focus on anything. I'd sort of chase things left, right, and centre. Like emotionally, I was sort of very, very needy. I was in need of a lot of sort of recognition and praise, and I would try and sort of find that wherever I could. So sort of behaviourally, I was trying to, if you like, reproduce all of the emotions and feelings that I used to get from playing, and I would seek them out in whatever way that I could, whether that be, women or jobs, or and I wasn't into booze or drugs or anything like that. So they weren't my vices, but it was, I was desperate for that sort of recognition and reward.
Yeah, you see a lot in the media. Sports stars after their retirement, they go down a slippery slope because they've lost that sort of identity when they've had in their athletic careers. Big names up in lights sort of thing during their careers. So you mentioned then just about your loss of identity. Do you think that's really important for athletes to prepare for following their retirement from a sport?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I just don't know how, well, sorry, I probably do, on reflection, that there are obviously ways you can prepare for that, but I think it's, the difficulty is that the world of professional sport is it's an addictive place to be, right? It's incredible moments of adrenaline and excitement and reward, like winning major games, or being super fit and super strong, and equally from a confidence perspective, like really understanding your God-given talent and exploring it, playing for your country, all these things that just bolster that sense of achievement and sense of self-worth. That's very difficult to sort of mimic and reproduce, if that makes sense. And then when you add on top of that, then all of the good stuff that comes with it, of like money, recognition, praise, massive crowds. You play in front of 80,000 people, or every week, or 15,000 people every week. You're kind of like, you're heralded, as you said, like in lights. You're a somebody, and your whole identity becomes being a sportsman or sportswoman, right? You introduce yourself as like, hello, I'm Ollie, I play rugby for a living, kind of thing. So I think you're right. I think you can help yourself by, if you like, identifying and really targeting and focusing in on another passion project. So what other things am I really interested in that really motivate me and engage me and excite me, so that you can offset that, for want of a better description. There's a natural segue and progression for you going into that. Whereas I think, well, for me anyway, and a lot of other rugby players, or sports people, you come out of your professional environment with all this structure, all of this process, and really clear lines as to what good looks like, coupled with all the other sort of euphoric, amazing feelings and emotions, and then it all just stops. And as a result of that, that's a very hard sort of transition to go through, and an acceptance process to undertake.
You said that it sort of just stops very suddenly. Do you feel like there should be more sort of support in place for athletes following their retirement? A lot of, barring football, footballers who are extremely well paid, ridiculously paid. Some athletes may not be set up for life after their retirement. So do you think there should be more support in place for those athletes?
I'll be honest, I don't know, but I would probably sit on the part of me that wants support, care, love, attention, affection is in agreement with you, of like, yes, there should be. The other half of me is like, well, look at every other sort of scenario in life. Like when people lose their jobs, I don't know, if they get sacked from an employer or something like that, there's no obligation on the employer to be like, Ollie, how are you getting on? Like, 6 months down the line, and what can we do to help you, and et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't mean that's right. I'm just saying that if you model that against everything else that sort of goes on in the world, it doesn't, it doesn't mean that there should be something there for each other. But in saying that, what's my core belief? My core belief is that we should be supportive and caring of everyone else. And if COVID's taught us anything, it's actually that the most important thing for everybody is the community. So if somebody is struggling for whatever reason, if it's they've come out of sport or they've lost their job or I don't know, they're not enjoying COVID or whatever, there should be a mechanism for supporting people and helping them through those sorts of arduous and difficult times. Because we're here for a good time, not for a long time. So how do we make that as enriching as possible for everyone? So in a roundabout way, I guess I'm saying to you, yes, we should, but I don't think it should be I don't think I agree. It should be just a given right. Because you've played sport or because you've played rugby, there should be a process afterwards that really helps you reintegrate back into society. Because you could argue, look, you guys have been offered like a winning lottery ticket for 12 years or however long your career is, that some people on this planet only dream of. And you've actually been able to live that dream. So why should we support you at the end of it all? You've lived the dream kind of thing. Now you've got to sort of come down to reality and help us all. But that doesn't fit within my core belief, right? My core belief is that, yes, we should be in a position whereby there is a way of helping guide people back into sort of a reality so that the blow or the fall from grace is not as big. There's a natural sort of segue into whatever it is you're going to do next, and that you're excited, you enjoy that, and you revel in it.
And I suppose in most cases, when someone is well prepared for retirement, they have that structure in place. So for someone like yourself, who sort of had their career cut unfairly short, it is hard to have that structure in place, because obviously you're thinking, I've got maybe 5 or 6 years at the top level still.
Yeah, the things I missed the most, obviously you missed the big games, right, and the playing or whatever else, but the things I missed the most were the process, the structure, the focus, the clarity, right, the absolute clarity of sport is a really advantageous position, because you get rugby, as was involved in my sport, you get the opportunity every weekend to what good looks like. You work at it all week, you work towards the weekend, you play the game for 80 minutes, and then at the end you've got feedback. You've either won or you've lost, right? So there's immediate feedback. It's tangible. Whether it's been a good outcome, a bad outcome. You then can look at the sort of more broader things around performance and whatever, and blah blah blah. And then Sunday, Monday, you're back in, you look at the video, you get, again, immediate feedback as to how you can get better. And everything is just this continual improvement that's cyclical every week. How do we get better? How do we get better? How do we get better? And then you come into the working world, and you can make decisions now that you don't know the outcome for 3 years, whether they've worked or not. And and that sort of patience and clarity and consistency of vision and trusting in your process, it just becomes a bit more grey, a bit more diluted, because you're so used to, you've been institutionalized around this process of bang, I've got this immediate feedback and immediate and real clear lines of what good looks like. And then I've got a coach or coaches that sit at the top that basically tell me what I'm good at and what I'm bad at, and where I need all the things to do. So it's kind of on a plate for you to just excel at. And then you go into a world where there's a lot of grey and it's not that clear, and you've got to make decisions based on nowhere near as much information and all the rest of it. So I think that's what, one thing I miss. And then obviously I miss the camaraderie, right? I miss there's nothing that rivals, for me anyway, a changing room and the banter and the fun or whatever that goes on in that environment.
So you mentioned earlier about, it's really important for athletes to have something to throw themselves into following their retirement. You've obviously had some pretty staggering achievements in your retired life up to this point. What would you say has been your proudest moment of your retired life so far?
Well, I'll probably be a bit cheesy, right? But I think my proudest moment is well, my two proudest moments, but my proudest moment is getting married to my wife. For all the reasons that I was talking around, which was like when I finished playing, I desperately needed that love and attention and affection and recognition, praise, all of that. And so much so that it became a destructive force for me, in that I could never settle on anything or anyone, because I'd be with someone, and then once it got a bit, safe and normal, it wasn't exhilarating enough. I needed someone else. I needed something else. I needed something else. And it was this sort of downward spiral, the self-fulfilling prophecy of like, you're never actually going to find contentment and true happiness, because I was being driven by the wrong motives, if that makes sense. And my wife, I don't know what the word is, but was the cure for that. She's the only person I've ever been with, and there was parts of things that I had to do, and there were parts of things that she sort of represents and lives by. But she's the constant for me, if that makes sense. That if you like, every day reminds me of equally the other way that I could have gone, and so I'm so grateful that she's sort of in my life for definite. So that's the number one, which is probably not what you're sort of looking for in terms of an achievement. Yeah. So if I sort of remove those bits out of the way of like my wife and our two incredible children that we now have, from a physical perspective and achievement wise and whatever else, it's a good question. I mean, sailing around the world is obviously an amazing experience. 11 months at sea, 46,000 miles. An arduous, difficult slog, but an amazing. When I look at the globe and I spin it around, I'm like, wow, I've been on a boat all the way around that. But I think my favourite one of all time, and I've got 4 Guinness World Records now, but I think my actual favourite one was cycling across the whole of America. That was an incredible experience with a brilliant group of people, and I just never realised how amazing the US is. It's just such a cool country and so different, and the landscape is so diverse. It's just an amazing country, an amazing thing to have done, and to do it on the back of a sort of road bike was even better. So that would probably rank as my favorite physical challenge achievement.
Honestly, I was really bad. I was really thinking you were going to say Mount Everest, because obviously that's like the pinnacle for a lot of people in terms of achievement physically in the world. So
that was great. I mean, don't get me wrong, that was a great experience. It was really hard. I think, I mean, that's what I mean. If you started trying to pick these, it's like saying, who's your best friend and all the rest of it. It's difficult to sort of segregate, because someone feels a bit cheesed off by it all. But I just think that it was probably the timing as well of the race across America. It was just at the point where I'd started to get real clarity back in my life. I was feeling, I'd gone through that sort of whole feeling depressed. I actually did that ride with my now wife, but who was my girlfriend at the time. And I just think it was the first time ever that I was like, you know what, I've found peace, if you like, in myself, having for a long time wrestled with a lot of awkward and difficult conversations and thoughts and whatever, and probably never really believed actually that I was going to get clarity out at the end of it all. So I think that's probably why the race across America sits at number one. But going up Everest, the North Pole, they're all, I mean, incredible places to go to, amazing experiences. But equally, the reason why the race across America was amazing is because America is an amazing country. Like, you go through it all, and it's brilliant, it's awesome, and there's like a few comforts and whatever as you cycle and blah, blah. Whereas Everest and the North Pole, it's just bloody hard the whole time.
Yeah.
I mean, beautiful. You look around and then you're like, I can't breathe, or it's freezing, or I'm eating out of a bag, I'm eating rubbish food and blah blah blah. So the whole thing is basically just a test of your mental, emotional and physical fortitude, which I reveled in and loved. But I wouldn't say that it's a it's an enjoyable experience all the way through, if that makes sense. There's peaks and troughs.
Yeah, at least you're able to have a nice bed and have a beer if you wanted in America.
Well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, you were constantly cycling. It was a continual race the whole time. But the food you ate was
Yeah.
nice food. You know, even though you were moving all the whole time,
Yeah.
you were. So, yeah, I don't know.
So I just want to go back to when you actually retired from rugby. So when you got injured, you've mentioned that you tried to recover and you wanted to make the 2016 Olympics in Rio. So how hard was it when you were actually told or realised that it wasn't going to happen?
Well, as in what, when they like actually told me, or as in when I sort of accepted it in my own personal
Well, when
mind?
you sort of accepted it, really, because obviously it must be such a hard thing to come to terms with. You know, rugby's been your whole life for as long as you can remember, I would have thought.
Yeah. So it probably, when did it sort of happen? Well, it was, I retired, went and jumped on this boat and did a whole year sailing around the world. So like there was a year gone. And then I came back and I tried for 6 months to train and come back and play rugby again. And I actually went to Dubai and, you know, tried to, I actually played for England A out in Dubai with the hope that I could, you know, make a comeback and all the rest of it. And then that didn't materialise. So I knew probably end of December that the rugby was sort of moving away quickly. But if you like, the emotions of that didn't hit then because I had the North Pole coming up straight away. Like the North Pole was happening in March. We left in March. So if you like, it was kind of this reluctance and acceptance of like, maybe it's all over. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I can go to the North Pole and, you know, come back and it'll miraculously be better as well then, right? And in that period, actually, when I was in Dubai, I got my offer to go and work for PwC. So one of the guys that I'd sailed around the world with, he had been on my boat. He was a partner at PwC, and he said, "Look, I really want you to come work for us." And fast forward sort of 15 months later, he'd made me this job offer. Call it serendipity, but bizarrely, the night that I kind of knew that my days were numbered with the rugby. And I'd said, look, I'm going up to North Pole. So when I come back, I'll start. And I literally started the day after I came back from the North Pole. And so I think the time that it really hit home was then. Was then when I turned up in PwC in a suit of like, oh wow, like this is me now. You know, and I was still at a point where I was like 31. I think Glasgow Commonwealth Games had either just been or was just happening, and yeah, that was tough. That was tough. And also I was filled with sort of like a bit of excitement and enthusiasm of like, wow, I'm starting a job in this new place. And then after being in the office kind of thing for a month or so, the reality starts to sink in of like, I'm not a rugby player. And then it's probably exaggerated and made worse by the fact that in my new environment, I was like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what everyone else is talking about. I don't really know how I can add value here. Like all of that sort of stuff then starts to creep into your mind. And that's when you get the sort of imposter syndrome stuff and you start to get those big feelings of self-doubt and everything else. And that was, you know, that was it. So, and that probably, if you tie that in from when I actually retired, the World Cup was in June 2013. I started at PwC in May 2015. So probably just 2 years, almost exactly, or 2 years and a bit after that is when I sort of started to wobble.
You just mentioned then, you know, you come in from, or you mentioned earlier that you had like such a rigid structure in your playing career. You know, you're training every day, you play a game, you got immediate feedback. It must be so hard going from that, and like you just mentioned, to the job, and you feel like you're not adding value to anything. Whereas you've come from a place where, you know, you've been captain, you're one of the star players, you feel like I can't do anything wrong here. It must be such like a strain on your mind as well.
Well, I mean, it's that when you've come from a position whereby you, like, I mean, at one point I got voted as the best player in the world, right? So I was super confident in my own ability of being able to sort of chuck a rugby ball around. And if people said to me, hit that target 15 times from 20 meters away, I can do it. Right? I was capable and competent of being able to do it, and I felt also that I knew my industry, right? So I mean, I was a winger, but I could call bullshit on like a prop or a second row or whatever else. Now, I'm not saying I could play that role, but I knew what good looked like in terms of an outcome or whatever else. Whereas in my new environment, I just had no idea, right? No idea what was good. I had no familiarity to it. So I didn't know my industry. I suddenly now was no longer an expert. I wasn't the best or one of the top notch. I had an identity crisis. And then I really didn't know what my transferable skills were. Everyone's talking around like, got all these transferable skills. I was like, well, what are they? Like, I don't think anyone's really going to value and appreciate how fast I can run up and down the stairs in our building, or how many people I can knock over at the photocopying machine. Like, that's not a value in this business. So it just took a long time to sort of accept that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just, you said that it took a long time to accept that, and now just looking on your LinkedIn profile, you're the director of PwC, you're founder of Optimist Performance. You've obviously found a pretty good niche in yourself following retirement. Worked out all right for you.
Yeah, no, I think like I would say it's a work in progress, Callum, all the time. Like the reality is the euphoria and excitement and confidence that I had playing rugby and having a ball in my hand. I don't think, I'm being honest, I don't think I'll ever get again. Right, but when I look at it objectively, me playing professional sport was the culmination of 30 years of commitment. Like, I started playing rugby at the age of 4, and I didn't become a professional rugby player until I was 19. Right, so I had 15 years of trying and getting disappointed and learning and practicing and developing new skills and playing the game and whatever else, before suddenly it became a reality that I'd actually get paid for it and I could play for England and whatever else. And so, if I put that into this context, I'm 6 years into a job. Right? So I'm not even halfway of what the time that I invested. And that was just to get to like being a professional rugby player. That wasn't to then go and do all the other bits. And my actual rugby career was then 12 years. So if you add all that together, I've had 27 years of playing and practicing and learning of being a student of playing rugby. So, and then the environment that I operate in, it's the euphoric high that you get of playing in front of 80,000 people, representing your country, captaining your country, and winning tournaments and big games. It's not replicable in the corporate world. So I think there's obviously an adjustment level, there's an acceptance level, there's an appreciation of other things, and there's also a recognition from me now of like, actually, it's going to take time. Like, it's going to take time, and I've got, bizarrely, one of the things we used to talk about with England was getting comfortable at being uncomfortable, and that's what I've got to do, right? And so there's been an acceptance of like, actually, Ollie, you're not going to necessarily be the best in this environment now. You're going to have to sort of adapt and mold to this, and that's what's happened. To be honest, that's the sort of process that I've gone through and go through every day. And the great thing about sports people is, we're ambitious, we're hardworking, we're courageous, we'll try things and whatever else. And so that's what we do. That's what I'm doing, and that's why I'm very grateful for the things that are happening. Like my Optimist business, I'm head coach for Wales Women at Sevens. I work at an amazing company like PwC. All these things I'm very grateful for. But they're still a huge work in progress for me, right? Do I every day turn up at PwC and feel comfortable and confident in the things that I do and the messages that the teams that I lead on and the things that we send into the market? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm still figuring out every day.
Yeah, you just mentioned there about the head coach for the Wales Women's Sevens. Obviously, must have been quite a proud moment to get there you know, the job offer or get back involved in the game in some way. Did you ever consider getting more involved in the game? You know, coming up England maybe if the job offer came around.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't think I'd like it that much. So when Ryan Jones asked me to do it, I was sort of a bit hesitant. And then when I did it and I started getting involved, I just realised just how much I absolutely loved it and missed it and revelled in it. So COVID was a real nightmare for me because it all stopped and ground to a halt. So yeah, I really miss that. I really miss that environment. I really miss helping develop and nurture talent. These incredible women that are inspirational, trying to sort of change the game in their country, shift the goalposts in terms of expectation, both personally, collectively, and from the community. I think it's phenomenal what they're doing. So I loved it. I really, really loved it. So yes, I absolutely would love to stay involved, get back involved, remain involved, whatever you want to call it. But we'll just have to see what happens on that front.
So just finishing off, I just wanted to ask you, one of the generic questions. Looking back on your career, what would you define as your proudest moment?
Oh, my career, my proudest moment, from a games perspective, was the win that we managed to pull off in New Zealand against New Zealand, having back in 2009, no England side had ever been to New Zealand or even got into a final against New Zealand. And in their own back garden, we played against New Zealand and turned them over after going 17-0 down. So that was and we won it on the hooter. That was special. And then to be able to then fast forward 4 months later in London, we were 19-0 down against New Zealand in the final in London, and we won that one in extra time. So we did the double on them in the same fashion both times. That was epic. And to be captain for both those games was just out of this world experience. Yeah. So that was, from a rugby experience, that was great. I think from a cultural perspective in my career, signing for Stade Francais, who were at the time one of the biggest clubs in Europe, living in Paris, learning French, playing in pink, and playing with basically like a Globetrotters team of Parise, Bergamasco, Simon Taylor, Le Guizamont, Gonzalo Tiesi, Lionel Boxy, Julien Dupuis, Mathieu Bastereau, all these iconic players, right? That were world-class. Mark Gasnier, Hugo Southwell, James Haskell. Bloody hell, I forget all the names of people that were there. I just was lucky, right? Really fortunate to be there and to be part of that group of people and to play for such a special team and live in such an incredible city.